Hello everyone. Welcome to Collegiate Game Day, the CSL show where we wrap up everything that happened in the previous tournament and maybe take a look at what's coming up ahead. Our sponsors this season are, of course, NCIX. If you have any computer needs, go check them out. They're an awesome resource. I had a roommate actually buy a copy of Windows 7 off them not long ago. And of course, Raid Call is also being kind enough to grace us with their sponsorship presence this year. If you guys are watching during our cast, go grab Raid Call, download it, install it. It's quick, it's painless. You can get on in there. Go to group number 1111. We will be there every single cast. We'll be talking to you, answering any questions, and probably even talking to some coordinators or other players after games. As for this show, today with me is two of our casters, Chris Seinico Messer.
Hey, how are you guys?
And of course, DP, the cheesehead, the one and only Daniel Polly.
What's up?
And I am Daniel Tompos. You might know me as Imagine in other places. You probably never heard of me as far as CSL goes, but that's because I'm usually behind the camera yammering in these guys' ears. Anywho, let's get this show on the road. It's the first one we're doing here of probably what'll be, I think, 3 or 4, where we recap the previous bracket, and we'll probably be pulling in a special guest as well at some point. So let's get started, shall we, guys?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first up, what we are going to talk about is this last bracket, and let me pull that up over here. And so let's get started. There were, I think about 50-something teams that registered.
Yeah, something like that. But there was also several forfeits and several teams that withdrew prior to the tournament. Again, not the best timed tournament ever in the world because a lot of students were out on spring break, but there was still quite a few universities that competed. I mean, enough to make a really nice tournament out of it. Looking at it. It's just funny because you have to knock off all the spoilers off the bracket. It takes time.
Yeah, it's a well. I mean, I actually like the fact that there's spoilers. It made it a lot better to follow as it went.
Oh yeah, definitely, no doubt about it.
Yeah, agreed.
So looking at really the first round, there were a lot of buys, there were a lot of forfeits. Anything stand out for you guys about anything that happened in the first round?
For me personally, Berkeley again. I mean, it's only been about a month since the CSL Grand Finals. I mean, these guys basically got back on the bike, and instead of just trying to relearn how to pedal, they just entered the Tour de France. They wore the yellow jersey. They led the whole entire way and dominated once again. I mean, back to back. I mean, after winning a championship, now they're qualified for the playoffs for this spring season. It's dominance. That's the biggest standout of all for me.
Yeah, I mean, going off of what DP said, I mean, Berkeley just practiced so much for last season. The qualifier was only a month away, so all they had to do was practice hots and kind of stick to their guns. And I mean, with the roster that they have and the practice schedule that they maintained for last season, it's not surprising that they kind of breezed through this first qualifier.
Well, on the other hand, you do have to realize that, I mean, Suppy didn't even pick up Heart of the Swarm until he was done with CSL Finals, and that was, a mere month ago, and some of these other teams could have been playing in beta. I mean, personally, I know we gave out nearly, 500 beta keys during our last season, so there were
That's how we got Nurse to watch, man.
All right.
That was it.
But there were a lot of teams with a lot of beta keys who could have been practicing, so, it was... just goes to show you good players are still going to be good players.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, somebody like Suppy, yeah, he has resources. He's got EG, he's got Berkeley, he's got probably a lot of Grandmaster friends that he could talk to easily. People like, he had even, I think, Scarlet right after the Grand Finals stay with him. So he had a lot of time I feel like he had more than enough time to kind of get acquainted with the game. And I mean, not like anybody was really that ahead of the ball. I mean, as we're seeing right now, some of the metagame in Heart of the Swarm is fairly similar. I mean, not too, I mean, it's similar, but not too close to what it was in beta. There's more new stuff already out as it is.
I would say for Zerg, the only matchup that's changed crazily is ZVT. I mean, ZVZ, you're just using more Mutalists because they're just better. And in ZVP, I mean, Yeah, you are doing. I guess Hydra's Viper is actually very popular. I mean, the game has changed for Zerg, but I feel like Suppy, like it's not even phasing him right now. Like he's just so good that it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did look pretty good in his games, not having played HOTS or even. I think he was coming off his MLG. Unfortunately, not such a great showing, but to be fair, none of the foreigners did that fantastic in that tournament anyway. Any let's see. I think there were a couple of notables who either had to forfeit or draw.
Yeah. The big two names that pop out, Washington and Georgia Tech, both, of course, Washington, everybody knows, reaching to the CSL Grand Finals, getting the third, fourth place semifinals, so that's pretty big when you take them out of the tournament. That's a lot of talent with Kawhi, Caliber, and the rest of the crew, and then, of course, Georgia Tech ran under Mason's lead, so those are two teams that could have just as easily qualified.
And even University of Western Ontario forfeited, and of course they have Stogie,
Yep.
who absolutely beat my ass in the regular season last time. It was, dude, I prepared for like a whole week, and I was like pumped. I was hoping that I could at least make it to the 15-minute mark, and he just like kind of killed me with like links and roaches.
It's tough, man. It's tough playing some of those like top players. Now the other team that qualified aside of Berkeley, it was UC Davis, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a pretty big story as well, seeing as last season they didn't really do well at all. No offense to UC Davis, of course, but they got a couple big names back, if I'm not mistaken, Spanishawa being one of them. That's a big help. And did TBZ come back, or was he on the roster last season as well?
I think he was on the roster, but
I don't recall if we ever casted in their games, but I'm not even sure he played that much. Like I from what I understand, because of course one of our other casters, Alpha Ferg, he started the club at Davis. I believe he mentioned that that both of the players were not there at all. So I'm not entirely sure why or how that happened, but it did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, those are their two top players right now. I would say they're the 1-2 punch for UC Davis. When it comes to playoff time, they will probably have to find that third and fourth person, at least a third person, to kind of help them out. I'm not sure how stable they are in the 2v2 and how the rest of their 1v1s are going to be able to handle the playoffs. So they're going to need to at least find a third punch to be able to force an ace match to maybe bring Spanishawa or somebody back into the fold. I think it'll be interesting.
Let's move along in here. Let's get to a few of the later rounds. One that I found personally interesting is the University of Waterloo, who has traditionally been a fairly prominent CSL member, getting knocked out by Rutgers, who I believe last year they actually made it pretty far too. I think they got knocked out by Berkeley in, I want to say, the round of 32. But
sounds about right.
But having them come back once more, and if we look along a little bit further, they only lost to UC Davis, and that was a 3-2. And when you're facing against TBZ and Spanishawa, and one of them twice because of ace matches, that's Rutgers, man. Apparently they're here.
Yeah. You got to watch out for them in future qualifiers. That's
they got Benji, one of our staff guys. He's a GM currently at the moment, so I guess the team is overall just playing at a very high level. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean UC Davis took out University of Minnesota Twin Cities 3-0 in the quarterfinals, so it shows comparatively how strong they are in the quarterfinals and how close Rutgers came to actually taking their spot.
Yep.
Now, do we think there's any like unfortunate kind of seedings? Anybody like unfortunately got knocked out too early in this tournament? Looking at the bracket.
I mean, the one that stands out for me, just because I'm from the Northeast, is University of Minnesota Twin Cities versus MIT, and that went 3-2. And MIT is a pretty decent team here in the Northeast, along with Harvard. I would say is pretty solid, but the Northeast definitely not as strongly represented in the CSL. So it would have been nice to see MIT kind of get a little bit further, because I know they have the potential to do so, because they just have an overall solid lineup.
You also had University of Illinois, who unfortunately ran into UC Berkeley, but I have a feeling they'll be back. They'll be back, and we'll see a lot more of them. And I think another notable should be San Jose State University. I believe they made it to the round of 8 last year.
Yeah, sounds about right. Round of 8 or round of 16, something like that.
And they actually lost to Ohio State. So we'll see how. I know that one of their being from San Jose State. I know that one of their top players actually quit.
Really.
He apparently joined a frat and quit playing StarCraft.
That's what happens, man. You start partying. You got to. I mean, you can't.
Dude, I
It's
balanced both,
it's a
man.
difference between the beer pong arm and the arm to play StarCraft, man. It's a lot different. Whole different sport. For me personally, the standout right here is this three-person group right here. Ohio State, UC Irvine, and Georgia Tech. Of course, we see Georgia Tech, who's got a forfeit. But if they were to play in the first round, they would have had a bye. So basically, anybody that wins that other side gets a bye in the second round, and which, of course, Ohio State and UC Irvine clash. They ended up with a score Ohio State going 3-2. Of course, Ohio State reaching the semifinals. It would have been interesting to see if maybe UC Irvine would have been able to take that series. Would have they been able to get that far as well into the semis? So, kind of an interesting, fun little thing for me to note.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we went on, of course, so we had in the later stages and in what we casted, the games. I wouldn't say that they were the closest we've ever had. We definitely had some interesting ones getting there, but I feel like from the round of 8 on, the teams that should have made it through did make it through.
Well, again, being a best of 5 format, teams don't exactly have to kind of sacrifice or kind of hold back their weapons, hold back the resources, try to like put them out evenly. For example, I mean, from the grand finals, for example, University of Washington, who kept Kawhi Rice and Caliber in the last 2 matches, in which, of course, they lost the very first 4. Now you could just put them out right away, and you could utilize them because there's only a total of 5 matches max, and of course, 4 being part of the main lineup. That's a big factor.
Yeah, I guess most people don't actually think about it. In our team format, you can have a suppy, but you need all those other players as well, that impact is definitely lessened when you're running in the round of 5s or best of 5s.
What was the big shock? What was the big shocker from last year? I think it was in Europe. Ajas beat Catalina.
Yeah, with Lucifron and Vortex.
Lucifron and Vortex.
Where
like,
they lost to those two. But
4-2. They lose 4-2, man. That's the importance of having a good team behind yourself. You have Lucifron and Vortex, and you still lose in a Pro League format. That's like, that's just disappointing. Yeah, it's tough.
And I think it definitely got tougher for that Catalina team because they could go. The regular season was best of 5s as well. I think even like most of the playoffs were best of 5s, and then it wasn't until later when they got into the best of 7, and here it shows. You can't go up 2-0 and hope somebody comes along and wins another one, or get into an ace match and win a second one for a team. You have to get at least I think 1 more win or 2 more wins.
That's the best aspect of having like the Pro League format at universities, because again, it's a university. You don't know who's going to be at your university. You don't know what level they're going to be playing at. This isn't exactly like an officially NCAA funded league where we have coaches and teams and people recruiting people around the nation. This isn't a professional esports team. These are all universities, so if say you get like the big problem with having a GSTL format would be like somebody Suppy, just you send out Suppy first, he could 4-0 the whole entire team, but with the Pro
It's not that
League
he could, it's that he would.
yeah, I know, right? I'm trying to be kind. I'm trying to be kind,
No, I know, but it is good that we have this format, because honestly, with the GSTLS format, I mean, schools would literally like not even be, there would be almost no incentive to participate for a lot of universities, because it's just like, it is like kind of that hopeless scenario. All you need is one big player, but I mean, that's why we have the format that we do, is to emphasize the importance of having the whole team.
Well, you also don't forget, Suppy did actually lose to Rutgers in the playoffs against a very. I remember observing that game. It was a very amazingly crisply timed Protoss 7 gate. I believe it was on Cloud Kingdom, like MC style 7 gate that just totally wrecked Suppy. So you can't even depend on that, because you have no idea that when you're getting, especially later on in the playoffs, when you're getting into those games, if you're depending on that one player, you might have some issues if you suddenly lose. So in the end, it was UC Davis and UC Berkeley pulling through. I would personally say that Maryland College Park being that far along was a tiny bit of a surprise. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, they performed decently well last year, at least from what I had down. They got knocked out early last year, but it was
I think round of 64
it
playoffs.
was in the fall bracket. They ran into Washington somewhere very early, and
Yep.
I mean, you run into one of the finalists, and Washington being as strong as they were, they're going to be able to probably outmuscle you with the amount of men they have.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Looks
agreed.
like they went through University of Guelph, who
Guelph.
Golf. I
Guelph.
think it was Gulf. We casted them a few times. They were pretty solid. BYU. I didn't even know Mormons play StarCraft.
we're not going to get into that
Nothing against
discussion.
Mormons. And of course, they beat Northern Arizona, who was also, I believe, another round of 8 team from last year. So it's good on them. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about on this bracket?
Well, I mean, it's the first bracket. It's the first qualifier. It kind of hit at an interesting time between spring break, between people transitioning over to HOTS. I mean, it was right in the first week when HOTS came. I mean, not the first week. It was going into the second weekend, right, with HOTS coming out.
Yeah, it was still very new.
Yeah, it's still very new. I mean, you got to account for things like players are still trying to purchase the game. You got players still trying to adjust to the metagame because not everybody plays at a high level or as a GM or is on a pro team or a semi-pro team where they have those resources where they could develop a lot quicker. So I think as we go along through the season, when we get to qualifier 2, 3, 4, especially 4, we're going to see probably a lot more teams join. It's going to be very competitive. It should be a lot more interesting to see what the metagame developing, how well teams perform as well. I mean, that's probably why we're going to also see some upsets too, because teams are still getting adjusted to the metagame.
Fair enough. Chris, anything else to add? Or?
Yeah, pretty much agree in the sense that I think the first qualifier, everybody's for the most part still at that base level, but the teams that will set themselves apart will be the ones that really practice HOTS and not rely on the skills that they picked up in Wings of Liberty, and those will be the causes of the upsets coming up in the qualifiers.
I don't disagree. All right, so let's move on to our other little segment here. I believe we are going to go over some of our quick highlights, games that we found interesting from this casted last round of 8 and round of 4. DP, how about we start with you?
All right, round of 4.
Hold on just a moment here.
Oh, whoa! I'm just getting my stride on, man.
All right.
I'm about to get in my stride.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Let's go ahead.
So let's rewind the clock. Round of 4. It was UC Berkeley versus Maryland, Aiden versus Fan, in a TVT on Star Station, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
It was a very quickly played game because Fan for UC Berkeley decided to go double proxy Reaper, which on that map I found to be... At first, again, going back to this, I was at first going to go T-Beezy for going drops and using medevac boosters for making it look amazing. But this game caught my eye because he decided to go double proxy Reaper on this map. If you're not familiar with Star Station, the main base has a lot of jumping cliff area. There's a lot of surface area that you have to account for when dealing with Reapers in between your main, your natural. And, I mean, on a map like that, I think that's probably one of the best there is because we just watched and saw just how well he abused the ledges, the area space. He got in there originally, harassed quite a bit. He was able to kill a lot of SCVs, get out of there, get more Reapers, hop back in, do more damage, and just trade it very efficiently over and over and over again. And, again, that type of style is very risky because you lose 1-2 Reapers and you start letting your opponent Terran get like ahead in the Marine count or get even with it, it starts becoming a lot harder to harass. But eventually we saw just microed really well, picked off SCVs, started to pick off some supply depots. He even used, I think, 2 SCVs, if I'm not mistaken, to help with the attack. But just eventually the numbers got too overwhelming, and eventually with the Reapers he was able to overtake his opponent. And I think Aiden kind of rage quit out of there from that game. I swear he lifted and started floating to the corner. That made me laugh so hard.
That's not the sign that you're happy and you're buying out with like a a tip of the hat. That's you just going in the corner and pouting, which I don't blame him for.
So do you think that Reaper play like this could be standard? I mean, let's face it. Something like this can be considered to be very, very cheesy.
Well,
now,
it is.
Would you consider it to be, as we go along, Reaper use like this could be more of a norm? Like, I would assume it's not something that you would toss in every game, but could we see more like this?
Well, in TBT, I think it's map dependent because you need area surface to jump on. If there's a natural ramp going down, and the only areas to jump are two small little areas right next to it, you're not going to see players go Reapers because there's you're basically jumping the Reapers to their death right away. So I think it's very map dependent. If in regards to TBT, again, in TVZ or like in another matchup, you could probably just do it anyways. But I think most Terrans will look at it as a good investment on a map with a lot of surface area. If you try to do double Reaper somewhere else, it's just not going to work, and you're going to fall very far behind.
Fair enough. Now, I think something that was mentioned during the cast was a lack of Aiden's bunker, which, as we see here now, it's on there, but it took.
He added it very late. Yeah.
Now,
by that time, the game was already kind of a lost cause.
How do you think that actually would have prevented all this from taking place?
It might have helped.
It's tough to say. I have to say
it's
very tough to say because again, going back to the whole reason, the map itself. The only, I guess, logical position would be like he did place right next to his command center, but even then, there's a lot of surface areas where those Reapers could start zooming around through the backside. And as we saw, even when he put the bunker, that's where the Reapers went. They went where the bunker was, and as soon as he popped out with the Marines, he picked them off, got back, healed up, and jumped right back in. So I think just overall, it's a good map to go Reapers on. And if you could just control and not lose Reapers, it'll work out fairly successful. But again, it's not impossible. It's not like an instant win. You have to micro really well, just as we saw Fan did. I mean, you saw the micro. He was pulling Reapers back very well, making sure the injured ones were in the back, make sure they were healed up. And again, that's a big part, too, with the HOTS change, where the Reapers regen health a lot, just regen health in general. So that's a big part.
Yeah.
Go ahead if you had anything.
I was just going to say that I think that double proxy Reapers, you probably won't see it too often, come a couple months from now, but I think that a single Rax with proxy Reaper is going to be something that we see just because you don't need that add-on anymore. And if you are going gas and you get a factory back at home and you don't need to use that Rax for a little bit, I mean, what's the commitment? Sending out that SCV a little bit early, and now you have that Reaper in his face and you can just make a factory back at home nice and safe. So I think that if the Reaper stays as good as it is right now, we will be seeing stuff like that for a lot of time.
Fair enough. Well, it was definitely an interesting game, if nothing else. I think we've seen some Reaper play in this first few rounds, but nothing quite that. Like, I think we saw one other proxy Reaper, but it's like a Reaper, maybe two. It wasn't this double craziness that happened here.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, how about your game?
I had a game, the first game that went down between UC Davis and Ohio State, between Isaac and Bobo the Bear. So it was a PVZ on Daybreak, and basically what happened was Bobo the Bear went for an Immortal Sentry all-in, just like in Wings of Liberty, except he had the Mothership Core. But he kind of danced back and forth with it. He finally committed, but that's when Isaac hit him with a counterattack. The reason I found this game interesting was because Bobo the Bear would have typically been dead in this situation if this was Wings of Liberty, but because it was Heart of the Swarm, he was able to do some damage, take out the third base of Isaac, go to the natural, do some more damage, and then recall into his main base and actually save it. He didn't actually end up winning the game from here, but he prolonged it so much longer than any Protoss should have in this particular situation. He ended up getting High Templar. He traded cost effectively against Hydras, and he stuck it out for another solid 20 minutes. And if this was Wings of Liberty, man, he would have been just completely dead.
And to further that point, I believe I'll see if I can find it. But was that the game where he actually was trying to recall much later on?
Yeah, and the Hydras
picked it off right before he did it, and actually, I think that here. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, that was the moment in the game where it was already looking pretty bleak, but that was just kind of like the slap in the face. Like, all right, man, this game is pretty much over.
Well, wasn't there a point also where Bobo tried to do the double Immortal drop within the main and just barely didn't get the
Yeah,
hatch in the main. I think that's a big tipping point because
yeah.
yeah, he had the lair down to red health, and with two mortals, if he was able to knock off the lair tech, I think that would have been huge because that would have just kind of disallowed from Bobo to continue the tech path and get better upgrades and continue his advantage throughout the game. And of course, with the hatch, the production would have been cut a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was actually a wild game. Like, I'm isolating this part because it's very specific to Heart of the Swarm. You know, the reason he was able to stay alive was the utility of that mothership core. But I mean, afterwards, he used that immortal drop. He did more damage. He could have done a lot more if he had sniped the lair. It was kind of close, and Isaac, you know, he played this very close to his chest and almost too patient, and you know, staying maxed out on a basic Zerg ground army like Roach Hydra almost came back to bite him. But I mean, his economy was just a little too strong, his play just a little too good for Bobo to kind of claw his way back in. But either way, I thought if anything else, it was a testament to Heart of the Swarm, letting players be a little bit more flexible, a little more creative, and actually having opportunities to get back into the game, where that was a huge thing in Wings of Liberty. It's just the complaint was it's so hard to come back. You know what I mean? The advantage,
Yeah.
once it's set, it's like, what do you do? I mean, there's just so few, you know, once the game was kind of figured out more or less, I mean, it was just tough to come back. So this was a cool example of creativity kind of, you know, giving him a second chance.
Now, so, you know, he started with the Immortal Push, which, I mean, was absolutely deadly in Wings of Liberty. Although I feel like sort of by the end of Wings of Liberty it had kind of been figured out. And people were Zergs were getting especially really good at cutting off before the push got to your base. But I mean, if it got to your base, it was still very, very bad for the Zerg.
Yeah.
Do you think that with Heart of the Swarm, I mean, obviously we're seeing the Immortal Push still be used. Do you think that it's something that will stick around? Do you think it's something that is just only made stronger by the fact that there's that Mothership Core? Or do you feel like, as we saw here, where there was a huge counter Roach push and many Hydras made, do you think it's the death of the Immortal Push?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be seeing this exact mixture of units come out onto the field at the same time as we do in Wings of Liberty. Just because getting that many sentries and that many immortals now is, no matter what, such a huge investment. And now as a Zerg player, with Mutalisk being better, with Hydralisk, you know, not being a useless tech tree because you can get that speed, it's like, okay, at this point, all I have to do is hold on for a little bit, and I get out better Mutalisk or better Hydralisk. And the Mothership Core definitely adds that element of you can fake them out and you can recall. But to invest all of that gas now early game and not commit, it's going to be much harder, I think.
True. All right, and now for my game, personally, we're going to delve into something that a lot of people have a little split opinions on in the CSL, which is their 2v2. I personally think that they can make some really interesting games. Of course, they can also make some really boring games where it's just, you know, 8-minute, you know, Baneling.
Now he has 18 Blink Stalkers.
Yeah. But what I wanted to show here, and let me cue this up real quick, was this 2v2 game between UMCP and North Arizona. Which UMCP, of course, lost to Cal, I believe, right? Or, yeah, I think they lost to Cal.
Yep.
They ended up winning this game, and it was interesting to me because there were Oracles used in a 2v2. And
Risky business.
Oracles are already a finicky subject. I think a lot of people, having been able to figure it out, of course, there's MC who rolled through a lot of MLG with his Oracle play, but in the 2v2 it seems like that's just a really dangerous proposition with a lot of defenses that can be around. The Oracles were really more of a pesky thing throughout the entire game, instead of, you know, it wasn't like they absolutely destroyed the worker line. You know, as we can see here, they got a few kills, and later on in this game, we also had Oracles that were flying into some Widow mines, which was not all that great. But I still found it to be kind of a gutsy play by UMCP, and they also pulled out the use of oracles in their later match, in their later 2v2 against Cal. I believe they lost that one, but you know, it was just really interesting to see oracles being used in 2v2. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's something that we'll see repeatedly, or was just somebody trying out something new?
Si, senor. We will see them more often because they are basically a harassment replacement for Phoenixes. Back in Wings of Liberty, we'd see the Phoenixes. You need about 2 or 3 to get in there and start lifting some of the probes and SCVs. This time, you roll in one unit, you click one button, and they start DPSing the hell out of your mineral line down. If your opponent doesn't have anti-air prepared or detection, or just doesn't react, if he reacts 1 second or 2 seconds too late, he's going to lose 3, 4, 5 probes, 4 or 5 SCVs just like that in the snap. They're a high DPS unit. We're going to see a lot more of them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that in 2v2, we're going to see a lot of them in ones. That's for absolute sure, and I'm sure we'll see them in twos as well. But again, like you were saying, Dan, it is kind of a finicky thing, and they are very delicate. The reason that MC is so dominant with Oracle is because his build is so tight in PvT. You know, he knows every timing. He has that Mothership Core for Photon Overcharge if he needs it. So he has the build sort of figured out in that matchup. But I mean, in terms of just getting oracles in twos, there's a lot of stuff that could punish that. So we're going to see players, I'm sure, try it, but we're also going to see some failures, I think.
Well, I think it's all going to be, I mean, in 2v2, you don't exactly consider that the most scouting matchup. You know what your opponent is. We don't see too much proxy play in regards to comparison to a 1v1 setting where you're basically now forced to hunt the whole entire map down. In 2v2, I think they're just going to be one of those units, not exactly like a mono battle unit, but definitely one of those units that, you know, you can harass with, kind of catch your opponent off guard, sort of like a DT, but I mean, just more of a mineral harass type unit.
Yeah.
I actually can't wait for updated mono battles which have oracles in there. That should be
Yeah, I wonder how many oracles you need to, like, if you could actually DPS down like a ball of Marines. But I mean, I'm pretty sure
it's 6. It takes 6 Marines. I think it's 5 Marines. One oracle can take down 5 Marines.
Right, but that doesn't mean that
but
two
then with
oracles can
stim
take
and
on 10
upgrades,
Marines.
and then it's gonna get all kind of wonky. But
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, oracles, they're pretty deadly, man. If you have some zealots maybe kind of coming in there and tanking for them real quick. I don't know.
The biggest worry is I wonder what improvements Blizzard is actually thinking to do. David Kim recently mentioned something that he was planning to actually buff the Oracle, and which that personally just scared the absolute crap out of me. I had my heart sank completely. I'm like, no way is that possible. But he did make a good point in regards. When do we see Oracles in the late game? We don't. We see them as a harassment unit early game because late game we have detection, we have mines in the way, whatever it is that's blocking Oracle harass. So are we going to maybe see some players figure out the meta and figure out maybe how to utilize them in the later stages of the game? Or are we going to have to actually have a buff to make them somehow better so that we could utilize them in the late game?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but I really think Reveal is like an awesome spell. Like, it's really good. Like, most Terrans, most Zergs by late game will have Overseers and Scans thrown down to take out those Observers, so it's really hard to get a good grasp on where that army is. But if you retain that Oracle from early game, fly it around the entire game, be annoying, and then just cast Reveal on his entire army, and it's like, you see everything. You can position a High Templar, you can position your flanks, you can get everything set up, and it's like, I really think Reveal is awesome. I think what D-Kim's going to do is buff the Oracle in a way that he mentioned that it's too powerful in the lower leagues because it just kind of sits in that middle line for 5 seconds and everything's dead. But then once you get to that higher league, it's like if you have any kind of defense up, the Oracle has to be shoot away, and that's where it has to fly around for 10 minutes, and then hopefully it can harass a fourth or something. But
what I'm hoping for is that they actually we see more of it, because right now, actually personally myself experiencing it, I'm seeing a lot more 3 Oracle, kind of sort of a replacement of a Void Ray, sort of a 3 Oracle timing push with gateways off of 1 base for Protoss.
Yep.
So we'll see what they do with that, because right now basically the main reveal function is for PvP. In case of DTs, you don't really have to deal with any detection in regards to Zerg. With Terrans, you don't see 1/1/1 with the Banshee really that much anymore because of the Nexus cannon. So that's
Reveal is the spell that has that huge AoE effect that you can see the entire army. Like once you cast it, it has those little white dots.
It's not the detection one. It's the it's the one where it keeps track of where you're.
It keeps track of the units for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I think
it's a minute.
Is
It's
it
like
a
2
minute?
minutes. It's like super long.
I think it was
it's
60
ridiculous.
seconds. They may have changed it, but yeah, I do remember a lot of pros saying that is probably what the Oracle is going to be most.
It's
amazing
really
at.
good. Like I don't think people realize it yet because I don't know. Like the Oracle right now, its most obvious use is shredding up mineral lines. But come that late game, man, if you just see the entire army for 2 minutes at a time, that gives you such a huge advantage.
Of course, unless you're MC, in which case you're just barreling down the front with Oracles anyway.
You just win.
All right, so we're gonna cut to a quick break here while we get our special interviewee possibly ready. We'll see if he's around. It'll actually be one of the UC Berkeley players. It should be Fan, but we'll see if he's actually available, and if not, we'll just move on to the next one.
He should be around. He should be around.
Right, so we'll be back in just a moment. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Collegiate Gameday. We're wrapping up this first episode, and we have with us one of the UC Berkeley players, Fan. Fan, how's it going today?
Pretty good.
Excellent. So, your team, after winning the Azubu Collegiate Championship last year, winning a bunch of money, then proceeded to come through and roll in the first tournament. Did you guys expect to do that, or did that take you by surprise as well?
Actually, yeah, I think that took us by surprise as well because we didn't play that much HOTS because we were, playing in the finals of the CSL, so we were training Wings of Liberty only for a very long time. And I decided to switch races going into HOTS. I played Protoss in Wings of Liberty, but I wanted to try Terran. So our team wasn't experienced with HOTS, and I was playing a new race, so we figured we probably wouldn't make it. So it was a pleasant surprise that we did.
Wow.
Yeah, you switched from from Protoss to Terran, didn't you?
Yeah.
So how's that been? How's the transition been from Protoss to Terran? Have you been playing any Terran prior to that, or was this completely brand new to you?
Yeah, back when StarCraft Beta first started, I was originally Terran, but eventually my computer got pretty laggy, pretty bad, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do the micro required, so I just switched to Protoss because honestly there's less micro required.
All Protoss players everywhere just put their hands.
I don't know if you're supposed to say that out loud, man. Oh god.
I mean, Protoss requires better other skills, but I think as far as micro goes.
My computer turned into a piece of
day.
garbage, so I switched to Protoss and just got mastered.
Yeah, I think you just made my day with that comment. That's hilarious.
Oh, God.
I'm just telling it how it happened.
Yeah, it's fair.
So we did discuss your crazy Reaper game versus Aiden. Was that something that you had specifically planned for that map, or was that something that you just thought up out of the blue?
Well, I checked his match history beforehand, and he did a reactor rush build every single game. So I just talked to my teammates. I was like, "Hey guys, what's really good against the reactor Reaper?" And everyone told me do an 888. It's really good against reactor Reaper. So I just went with it, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of dominated. I mean, Aiden was, considered to be the ace of that team. I feel like he's been practicing the most, and he was GM. So I mean, it kind of worked out that you just had a nice build prepared for him and just kind of crushed him early game there.
Yeah, I think I would have lost to him for sure in late game. When I checked his match history, he had 180 games played at that time, and I had 10 or 20, so I was not confident in a late game situation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, we did watch him in a longer game where he got into a tank battle with I don't quite remember who it was against, but yeah, it did seem pretty solid in that game. So I guess cheesing a little bit was not the worst idea.
Well, for my next one, there's 3 qualifiers left, 6 more teams that can join. Who do you guys want to avoid going through the playoffs, or who do you think will qualify, and then who do you think you want to avoid in the playoffs? Of teams that you think might qualify, I guess that would be probably the best way to word it.
Honestly, there's not that many teams that we're really scared of or want to avoid. Well, one would be University of Washington for sure. At the CSL finals, they gave us a piece of paper that had all our build orders and what players would play on what maps. They had us completely figured out. So we're really glad they did not advance.
That's straight out of like a high school movie, man. Like, yo, we got your moves figured out, dog. Like, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
Yeah, thanks, Chunin.
And I think they ended up giving you like a bunch
Yeah,
of scouting
exactly.
info on Chunum too, right?
Yeah, they gave us the scouting info they got for Chunum, so that helped us quite a bit as well. It was pretty interesting too, because it was basically exactly what happened. Like they had their build orders down, what their players should do against Chunum, and it was just like, I don't know, it was like reading what happened that entire day. It was just all there, and they did it like way beforehand, so it was really advanced scouting.
Do you think teams should kind of, at least in the CSL regarding into the CSL, should they work and designate time to that, like to scouting their opponents and have that kind of time to prepare, instead of just playing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we scouted quite a few teams too, but our scouting was like nowhere close to the level that University of Washington did. And I think that it's extremely useful. And next season, we're going to make sure we're not going to play on our normal accounts, and we're not going to get our Smurfs caught and all that stuff.
Well, we can only hope that Kawhi wasn't completely crushed by losing in that first round during last finals. I did want to ask you, because I've always been interested in what CSL teams do outside of StarCraft. You know, on the one hand, you have a team like Washington who does an entire boot camp and does it sounds like a lot of scouting and everything together. And then on the other side, you had like the RS team, who, if I remember correctly, they didn't even meet until like the semifinals of the EU finals. Like they had never actually met each other. How's the Berkeley team? Do you guys do stuff together outside of StarCraft, or is it mostly just whenever you get together for StarCrafting?
Yeah, we're pretty close. I mean, ever since last year, I think, when we played CSL, we pretty much played with all the same people, except this year we got a new freshman, Abstinence. But last year we were also going for the win, and we practiced a lot together. And outside of practice, we did stuff like bowling, karaoke, just random, just social events that helped the team bond. So it was pretty fun.
Dude, I wish I was a freshman joining your team, man. That would be so badass. Just like joining UC Berkeley as a freshman.
Yeah, Abstinence is so lucky. So lucky.
It looks like you guys are lucky to have him too. He seems like a pretty solid player.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He might have a little nerve issues, but overall he's a really solid player, and we're happy to have him.
Now, how many, kind of like a breakdown of your roster in regards to the year, like how many seniors, how many juniors, how many sophomores? Is there anybody in grad school that's currently playing for you guys, stuff like that?
Okay, so we have, I believe, one senior, one senior, two juniors, like 3 sophomores, and 1 freshman. So it's like all over the place, basically. And yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. But as far as skill breakdown goes, I think it's really just Suppy, and then the rest of us are basically all around the same level.
And then just kind of like...
Yeah,
so
exactly.
basically you'll at least dominate for another 2 years, stuff like that,
Pretty much.
As long as Suppy's going to Cal, you guys
Suppy, go to grad school, Suppy. Go to grad school.
All right. Any other quick questions for our interview here from either of you?
I personally can't think of anything. I mean, I appreciate you coming on. That's my biggest part. Thanks for.
Do you have any quick shout outs you want to do, Fan?
Yeah, shout out to my team, of course. Shout out to Suppy, Abstinence, Dale, 21J, and shout out to the people I play Dota with and NA Dota. And that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, and good luck in the upcoming playoffs, which I guess will be in a couple of months. Hopefully, you guys will get some good practicing in there.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Good to see you.
No problem. See ya.
All right, and of course that was Fan from UC Berkeley team. Let's see if we can.
It was funny. That's what I was wondering. I was trying to contact their coordinator. I'm like, why isn't he answering me? I'm like, maybe he hates me. No, he's actually out in. I think he's out in Mexico or somewhere. He's out on spring break somewhere right now. So couldn't find him, unfortunately.
I could also explain the not best webcam ever. All right, so let's do a quick look ahead to the next bracket. We don't quite have the brackets because signups are still going on.
For another day.
By the time this video goes out, it might be closed, but
Yeah.
but that's okay. Signups are still going on right as we are recording this.
Well, I mean, it's only 24 more hours, basically, at this point.
Yep, so we should have mostly a complete list. So as we take a quick look over here, going down this list, the first one I see that is actually on here is Carleton. Carleton, I think they had some sort of administrative issues last tournament, and they weren't able to get into the last tournament. I don't quite know the details behind that, but
yeah, I heard
they're
about
in here
that.
now, and they're definitely one of the teams that
Yeah.
you need to watch out for.
Dude, they're awesome, man. Katy Perry, the Protoss player that they have, and a few other players. I talk to their coordinator all the time. They have an awesome team. They have an awesome squad. They hang out all the time. They are a StarCraft 2 team, man. They're definitely one to look out for, and I wouldn't be surprised if they at least got to semis here, and we'll see them in other qualifiers if they don't make it through.
Of course, we have a bunch of returning teams as well. Teams like Maryland, teams like Rutgers, who we talked about earlier.
Yep.
And then, of course, we also have some giant elephants in the room, such as University of Washington.
Yep. University of Washington is in there. Even some other decent teams. MIT, like I said, I mean, I'm trying to rep the Northeast here.
Of course,
always
Georgia Tech as well. So
yeah, MIT, they may have a better showing here. And let's obviously some other great schools. UC Irvine's in there. SDSU is solid. I mean, there's just a lot of decent teams here. So.
And remember, only 2 of these teams can make it out, and the other have to try again 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks later, and then after that, it's done for the season. Any Any quick predictions? Who's going to make it out of here?
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to kind of go really quick over. I have like a whole little sheet of everything going on. Basically, a lot of the teams you guys mentioned, Washington, Carleton. I've got Northern Arizona, who last season, of course, everybody knows they got deep round of 8. This past qualifier, they got round of 8 again, so they're showing at least consistency. That's really nice to see. They're going to be playing it, and again, they're a top team, so we'll see them. I don't know if they're going to be actually able to make it to the semifinals because some of the teams that are joining into this tournament as well makes it really tough. Maryland College Park, Purdue at the very bottom, one of the last teams to enter, at least that I saw. Purdue, good school. They got a really bad draw last time. They played Berkeley right away, and they got knocked out. So we'll see what they're going to be able to do. I mean, we see the good schools. I mean, we know after last season, it goes from fall to spring season, so the roster shouldn't have adjusted that much. So most players should be the same. We know who the powerhouses are. I mean, again, if it was somebody like John, I mean, it's not like lacrosse. Like we see John Hopkins in there. Like they're probably not going to be that team that goes far. Now, what I was wondering if we have any info, like on the University of Texas Austin, is there a Polt factor in there? Is he involved any way? I know he's not able to play, but is he involved any way in that program?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything about it. I assume they would love to have him, but he also might be just too busy jetting around the world winning.
He might just be too busy being Polt.
I know, right? Well, yeah. I mean, if anything to note from this one, we have Washington, who I think withdrew prior to last qualifier. We got Georgia Tech getting involved in this one. I mean, when you got Masson joining in, when you got Kawhi, Caliber, all those guys. One team I'm still hoping to see, and hopefully they register, University of North Texas with Binsky and that whole crew. They have a really solid team. They could get really far if they actually signed up, but I don't see them just yet. If I had to make a prediction of who's actually probably going to win this, Washington, they just have a lot of talent. They're going to be one of the qualifiers. The other one's a little bit more up in the air. It would have to probably come down to Georgia Tech or I'm going to go with Carleton, one or the other.
Fair enough. Chris?
Yeah. My predictions aren't as extensive or as, I mean, it's pretty much bare bones. University of Washington, whatever the brackets might be, I think are going to make it through as long as they play with their solid lineup. I think the second qualifier, honestly, completely depends on the brackets. You have so many teams here with so much talent. And, if a big team faces each other in the round of 32 or whatever, you might see Carleton knocked out, or you might see Georgia Tech knocked out. So I think that is a huge factor. But my two predictions: University of Washington and Carleton. I got to rep them, Carleton.
Fair enough. And I mean, yeah, you can't argue against the Huskies. They were finalists last year. I believe they lost pretty much no players. I have a feeling they're just going to steamroll through and be right into the playoffs. And you know what? I'll go for Georgia Tech. I think they'll be there and definitely motivated. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining this first Collegiate Game Day. I hope you guys will stay tuned for other ones. They will be every couple of weeks as we recap the previous week. Of course, watch our cast. Mr. Messer, Mr. Pauly will be casting on Tuesday and Wednesday. And every other Wednesday, we have a fun little community night where we'll do little special fun games.
That was pretty fun.
King of the Hill is pretty fun today. King of the Hill is pretty fun today, so I hope we're going to be able to do more events. I heard stuff like Star Strikers and other custom games that we might try out as well. So that should be fun.
All right. Any last words, Mr. Pauly?
Shout outs to UCCS. We probably will sign up for this as well tonight or tomorrow at latest. So, and I want to wish all the teams good luck. Thanks to CSL, thanks to Recall, thanks to NCIX. What else? What am I missing, guys? Somebody help me out.
Oh, you did well.
We also got the Azubu scholarships.
That's right, the Azubu scholarships. I almost forgot about those. Yep.
Forgot about your T-shirt, man.
All right, Chris, do you have any final words?
No, I mean, it was great first qualifier. I'm looking forward to the second. Shout out to all you guys for watching. The numbers were awesome. You guys were awesome. Participation and raid call was, pretty solid as well. So, if we keep all those things going for the second qualifier, man, I'm pumped.
And as for me, of course, you can see all of our Twitter handles right there. And
I'm just going to assume that I'm actually pointing at it.
And in other places right underneath. So do give us a follow. We much appreciate it. And, of course, come back and watch. This is why we do it. So you have something to entertain yourself with on your everyday cast, right?
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. A nice, smooth way to put it, I feel like.
And, of course, thank you.
I hope you entertain yourself with this video.
And, of course, as DP said, big thanks to Raid Call and NCIX for sponsoring this year. Definitely do come and check us out during games on Raid Call and buy your stuff from
ID 1111.
Group ID 1111. That's down in the corner that way. All right, and I guess that'll do it for us for today.
Yep. Thanks everybody for watching Collegiate Game Day. It's fun.
Bye bye.
Take care.